Hello, everyone, and welcome to our presentation today. The title of today's deep dive session is Forms and Compliance, Part 1, How to Build Forms. This is part 1 of a two-part series focused towards ExpandIT's partners. So I'm Gary Rodriguez, and I'm on the marketing team here at ExpandIT. And today we also have Luke Kanan, who handles business development here, and he's going to be the main presenter. Just as a note, this webinar is going to be recorded. So if you have any questions, you can ask them at any time during the presentation using the Ring Central webinar Q&A box, where you can send us a message. And then at the end, we're going to allow some time to answer any questions that come in. So the agenda for today is as follows. We're going to just quickly talk about ExpandIT. Then we'll go over the main pain points that customers face. I'll then hand it over to Luke to do the actual walkthrough and how-to. Then we'll allow some time for Q&A and wrap up with the next steps. So just a bit of background about ExpandIT. ExpandIT has 20 years in the industry as a Microsoft ISV, and we have a standard integration to all versions of Microsoft Dynamics. Got over 50,000 daily users, and we have a team in North America for sales, support, and service delivery. And our focus is really on organizations who perform service and installations, and we help them to maximize productivity and reduce their administration costs. And just a quick overview of the solution. So ExpandIT builds a mobile sales and service solution that's, of course, integrated fully with Dynamics. And there's three main parts to the solution. The first is the Service Portal, which is for end customers. There's the Field Service mobile solution for technicians who are actually out in the field at customer sites. And third, there's the Resource Planning Board, which is for planners and dispatchers who are in the office. And there are three main benefits of the solution. First goal is to improve operational efficiency. Second is to ensure compliance, which is mainly what we're going to be talking about today. And the third is to enhance the customer experience. So why are forms important? Well, many companies these days need to keep records at each job site they visit. And for things like government regulations, reporting that's delivered directly to the customer, or for internal record keeping, using forms is important. It's important to have these forms handled digitally because this removes the risk of lost paperwork. It's also especially important for forms that need to be kept for government requirements. Secondly, digital forms are just easier to read, so there's no communication or confusion later on. The third thing is that an integrated digital form system removes the need for manual data entry. So transferring from paper to a digital system by an admin person, that is all reduced by having things done digitally, and it also removes any potential for errors that could be made. The next thing is that it's easy to keep records for future reference and tie them to a job or customer. It's also useful for subsequent visits by a technician who's going back to the same customer. Next, digital forms can be made mandatory for a job, so a technician who's on site needs to fill it out before completing the job and moving on to the next site. And finally, forms can be linked to the ERP system, which is what Luke is going to be discussing in more detail today. So now I'm going to hand it over to Luke, where he's going to show us how to build a form using the ExpandIT system. And again, if you have any questions during the webinar, please use the Q&A box and we will answer those questions towards the end. Over to you, Luke.
Thanks, Gary. All right, so what I'm going to be showing today is, the first thing is what a form looks like for the mobile user. So if you have a field tech going out into the field to do an installation or some sort of break fix or ad hoc service, and they need to fill out a form, how that would look like on the mobile client, okay? Whether they're using a tablet, a phone, or laptop. So I'll show an example of that. as well as what a completed form would look like for the end customer. So if the service company were to complete, let's say, an inspection form or a work summary form, what that would look like for the end customer when they would receive it by email, let's say, or if it were to be printed out on site. And then I'm going to walk you through our report building tool and how we would actually build a report. So ExpandIT has its own report building tool, as I mentioned, that easily allows really anyone to build a form from scratch within a matter of minutes. So what's great about our tool is that you do not need any development experience at all. And within, again, a matter of minutes, you can build a form that can be really anything that the functionality is really endless of what kind of data can be captured while out in the field. So I'm going to show you an example of that and sort of what data can be captured. And we'll show you that. And then how that would look like when printed, as well as how that would look like, again, on the mobile client. So how I'll display and demonstrate how quickly you can create a report or form and start using it. So I'm going to show my screen if you give me a second here. Gary, there you go. Okay, great. So what I'm showing you now is the actual mobile client. Okay, so I want you to pretend like we are a service company, we're a field user, and we need to fill out this inspection form. So this is how it would look like on a mobile client. So let's open up this form and let's see what needs to be answered. So you can already see the type of questions or the type of data that it's asking for. So we have a couple of yes and no questions like, did you conduct an inspection? Is the ground safe to use? Comments, right? We'll just enter something here. So you can see how easy it is to capture data out in the field instead of doing this on pen and paper, which a lot of service companies are. And as Gary mentioned, there's a lot of issues with that. You're going to lose a sheet of paper, can't read the writing. The field users are going to forget, right? They might forget to enter in a signature or capture mandatory piece of data that might be required. So we'll go ahead and add an image. And then maybe it's what you can see here, it's asking for a signature from the field worker, okay? So this is how it would be displayed on the mobile client. And then we can go ahead and save it. And then I can also send a copy of it. There's a little email button at the top here, a mail button. I can select it. And then if I knew the customer's email address, I could send them a PDF copy and it'll be sent to their email. So that is one way of viewing that. And I'll show you that in a second. But let's go ahead and save it. So we hit OK. And then you can see this report has now been completed. So we can finish out the work, our job for today, or we can complete another report. So that is an example of an inspection form. So let's look like, so what a completed form would look like for the actual end customer. And this is how really the form would look like for the end customer when they would receive it via email or if it were to be printed out. Okay, so here's that same inspection form, the exact same questions. You might have, you know, your if you're the service company, you know, your address, contact information, who the customer was that you completed service for, what service items that you worked on, all the contact information, etc. So that is all configurable because we are in a demo environment. It's showing my sort of demo environment data. But if we scroll down to the actual report here, these are the exact same questions that were completed on the mobile client by that service technician. Okay, so here's a PDF version that can be printed out. Some service companies have printers in their truck and they would literally print it out, or they did the other method where they send an email via PDF. Send a PDF copy via email, and then that way the end customer has access to that. So let's actually go back now, and I'm going to show you our report building tool and how we would build a report. So our report building tool actually sits on our middleware server, our business application server. So where our planning board sits and our approval module sits. Okay, so if we go back, I'll show you how we would access that. So you would go to under ExpandIT Service, it's under configuration, and then report definitions. So from here is you see a long list of reports that a service company may have. And then I can quickly enable or disable them, meaning if I hit disable, it will not show on the mobile client. Once I hit enable, it is now visible on the mobile client. So you may have reports that you're no longer using, or maybe they're seasonal reports, and they only need to be filled out for 6 months of the year or a part of the year only. So you can quickly enable or disable a report. I'm going to show you the one that we just worked on. So this inspection form. So let's open that up and let's see how that looks like. So I can give it, here's the name and the description. I can quickly enable it. And here's some configuration settings. Like if I wanted to hide the logo or hide company information or hide the header, this is where I can quickly do that. And then here below is a list of all those questions and all the data that was requested on that form. So this is how a completed form looks like in the report building tool. And then what I'm going to show you now is how we actually create one from scratch. So let's go back. And we're going to hit add new. And it's going to ask me for a name. So what's the name of this report? I'm going to do an example. This is a great example. This pretty much applies to any service company or any company doing installation out in the field. And this is a great idea for all of them, is a work order summary. Okay, meaning this is something that you would present to the end customer post service or at the end of the day. Okay, and you might ask the customer to sign off confirming that, hey, I've been doing service on site for you, or working on a long-term project. Here's how many hours I spent on site. Here's the materials I used. Can I get your signature just to confirm that I've been here? Boom, you capture the signature and that's saved, and that can be used and referenced later on. So very, very helpful. And I suggest pretty much every service company to do that if you're not doing it today. So we're going to call this a work order summary. And the description is to be presented once service is complete. Okay, and then we can link this to either a specific employee, meaning a resource, or a specific service order, right? Or a specific task. So if the task is, let's say the service order could be, any service order. So this could link to every service order that you would have, let's say coming from Business Central or F&O, or a service task. Like every time you change a fluid in a car that you're fixing, you have to complete this oil inspection form. So it would link to a specific task, or it could link to a service order in general, or a specific employee, aka a resource. So I'm just going to select the service order, and then I can mark this as enabled. So remember when I disabled reports and enabled it, meaning if I hit enable, it will immediately be available and viewable on the mobile client. So we'll actually enable this later on once we add some data. So I'll hit save, and we'll look for that report. That way I don't have to filter through. And here's that report that we just created, I believe. And let's open it up. So here's that very report that we just created. Now let's add some questions. The way to add questions, right here, the plus button and the questions tab. And now it's asking me to add a line. So once I hit type, you're going to see a lot of different questions and different types of data that you can sort of add. I'm going to walk through some specific ones that are going to be helpful in this sort of situation. So what I'm going to display are order lines or cost lines. So you might display costs that were used, generated in the field, and that can be displayed to the customer if you'd like to make that visible, right? And now this depends, it varies amongst different service company, where if you want to show details of the cost lines generated, do you want to show the prices? Do you want to show the list price? So this all varies again between service companies and how you sort of conduct business, how the service company would conduct business. But we have that option to display all of the data or keep it limited and not show pricing and sort of hide that information. Just show really the name of the materials consumed, for example. And then we have the ability for, if you want to be able to add comments to this line, quickly add comments. So we can show prices. If I want to show prices, indicate show prices. And yeah, so this is example of a type of line that we can add showing cost. So once I hit add, you can see it is displayed here. So let's create another one, and we're going to show material lines. So go back to type, material lines, because maybe we want to display the materials consumed while out in the field, and we want to display that and show that to our customer in our work summary form. Okay. So we'll just say in description, materials used today. I want to be able to add a comment. I want to show the details of the materials I use, maybe the quantity, the specific names and product numbers of the materials that I use. I want to show pricing, and I will save that and add that as a second line. Another great line to show in a work summary form is the time spent, so your timelines, okay? So if you want to display resource time, whether it's an actual employee displaying their time, or it could be multiple resources, right? It can be multiple employees, multiple field techs out in the field on a job site working, or it could be a piece of equipment, right? So if that service company charges for a dump truck that's on site, okay, and they charge hourly for it, you can display those lines, present it to the customer. That way they can see that information. You can also display them and show the cost. Okay, so maybe the hourly rate of the field worker, or the hourly rate for the rental of the dump truck. So you can display this information, of course, like I mentioned before. You can keep it hidden. So I'm going to put time spent on site working. We're going to show the details. We're not going to show prices for this one. I'm going to hit save. So far we have the cost lines that are going to be displayed, materials used, and then the time spent on site. So maybe we want to add some questions, right? So we'll go down here, find questions like yes and no, yes and no, not relevant. So we'll add a question that's pretty easy. So this is just a yes and no question, Okay, so there's going to be two options, yes or no, pretty straightforward. So you ask the question, and there's really two answers, two options. And the ability to add a comment, I'm going to hit yes. And what's great is that now this applies to all the lines, whether it's cost lines, capturing a signature, capturing an image, questions, comments, that we can make these lines mandatory. Meaning, if this is marked as mandatory, that means it has to be completed by that field worker, or else they cannot close the job. So an example of where you would use this or why is maybe during post inspection or doing the work summary, like the one that we're building today, and you present it to the customer, and you want the customer to signify that service was completed today, or work was done today. And that way there's no conflict later on. You have the signature of the customer. There's no, they can't give you sort of the runaround in the future saying, oh, well, we weren't satisfied with the service. Well, now you can actually present them with, a signature stating that they were satisfied with the service they received, and there should be no issue with billing or invoicing. That's an example where you might make a certain line mandatory, right, when you're capturing a signature. And that way there's no forgetting. This is a reminder for that service technician. They cannot close out the job or service order until they capture the signature, or until they capture or complete a form. So it's just really a reminder. So we'll save that question. The next thing we're going to add is be able to add comments. So if we go or add a caption, we're just going to write hello. I'll just quickly save that. The next thing we're going to add are images. Okay, but not only images; these are files. Okay, that can be attached to a report. So if it's maybe you took a picture of the new service item that you installed, or the new part that you replaced on a service item, or a file that needs to be attached to this report. Maybe it's if you're capturing like a analytics out in the field and you want to attach it to a specific form, you can easily do that. So we're going to add an image. And we're going to say, please add picture. It could be mandatory, like I said. We'll save it, and it's displayed there. And then the last thing we're going to do is an employee or the customer signature. So we're going to go down here to signature, and we're going to say description is customer signature. And we're going to mark this one as mandatory. Okay, this is mandatory. That way there's no forgetting of capturing the signature, because it's the most important piece in this form. So we'll save it. And now you can see all of the lines that I created, all the questions that I've added, all the data that I want to be able to capture while out in the field. And if I don't like the order, right? If I want the customer signature to be the first thing on the report, all I do is drag, move it up top. So it's really easy to rearrange the questions. Okay, it's really easy to delete a line. If I don't want this caption line, I hit the garbage can and it's gone. So you can see how quickly one can sort of create a report, a form, within a matter of minutes, right? Super easy. So I have this linked to a specific service order. I can have this report translated. So if you're dealing with organizations that have multiple divisions throughout the country or throughout the world, these reports can be translated into different languages, which is great. So that makes it really easy for that service company. Now I'm going to enable this report. And now this report is available and sort of live. And everything is automatically saved as soon as I make a change. So there's no save button. As soon as I make a change or add a line or delete something or update the description, it is automatically saved. So that makes it easier. So if we go back now and we go to that, let's filter for that work summary form. We can see that it's enabled. It's sort of ready to go. So let's take a look and see how that would look like again on the mobile client. So we're going to shift back to the mobile client. Sorry about that. I'm going to refresh the page so that way we get that latest report. And then here's that work order summary form that we just created. So as soon as I refresh the browser on the mobile client, it's available. And here's that report that we just created, right? Where we want to display the materials that we consume, right? So we can display, here's all the materials I consumed today. Here's the quantity that I used. Here's the hours, right? The time that I spent. And so I can see it in detail. So this is some previous, because this was an ongoing service ticket, so you can see some data that's already been added to it. So the time registered, you can see the quantity and the unit of measure. Okay. So the material lines, the timelines, the questions, you know, the yes and no questions, right? And then the ability to add a file or add an image. So if I click that, and if I was actually on my mobile client, it would ask me a few things. Like if I was on a, let's say cell phone, right now I'm using a simulator, but if I was on my actual cell phone or iPad, it would ask me if I want to open up my live camera and take a picture, or do I want to open up my gallery and view, you know, existing files or images, or if I want to open up my document section and add an actual document. So since I'm using a simulator and on my computer, it shows the file browser, but let's go ahead and add an image. So now an image has been added. And now it's asking for a customer signature, but this could easily say an employee signature. And this is what's, I guess, mandatory in this report. And so we're gonna capture signature. I'm gonna hit OK, save it. Of course, this can be edited. So maybe they messed up their signature and needs to be taken again. I can hit edit and then recapture this signature. And so like I said, we can email a copy of this report to the customer, okay, via PDF, send it to them. Or if I had a printer in my truck, I hit print and it's going to show and display exactly how I showed you before as a PDF. And I'm going to actually show you that in just a second. So we'll go ahead and save this. Mark this, we'll actually close out this job. That way I can show you this report. Now, if we go back, if I want to see that completed form, let's say how the customer would view it, let's go to the approval module, and I'm going to filter and try to find that job that was just worked on. So here it is. And then if we go to reports, we can see the work order summary form. And here's sort of how, if I were to print this report for the customer, this is what they would see. Okay, so we have the cost lines and the materials consumed, the timelines, and the questions that we asked, and the images and the signature. Okay, so again, this is what would be displayed to the customer via email, or if we were to print it, this is the format we would print in. what's great is that in our approval module, before, let's say, you send it to the customer, okay, on the mobile client, you could have a service manager or a project manager review these reports and edit the reports right here. So I can change the report if I'd like to as a let's say service manager or project manager. So if I want to remove an image or change something, maybe we're showing too much information, a project manager, service manager can make edits and make changes before they're actually submitted and sent to the customer. So just an added layer or second set of eyes to review this the form that was completed. Okay, so that's it for my section of the demonstration. So what I showed you was what a form looks like for a mobile user on the mobile client. And I showed you the example. The first example was that inspection form and what a completed form would look like for the end customer. I walk you through how to build a form from scratch. So we built that work summary form where we displayed, order lines and cost lines, material line, timelines. We had a couple questions and images, and we had to capture signature. And then we showed you how that would look like on the mobile client, and then how it would look like again, how that completed form would look like for that end customer. And of course, how that completed form out in the field can be edited before it is sent to the customer by, let's say, a service manager or a project manager, right? Like I said, a second set of eyes to review that. So I hope you enjoyed that presentation of how to quickly see how quickly it is and how easy it is to sort of create your own reports using our report building tool. So I will hand things back over to Gary.
Okay, thank you, Luke. So we're just going to go over a couple of the key points that we covered today. So as you've seen, there's 5 main value points that we covered. The first thing is that you can instantly capture accurate data while you're out in the field, reducing the chances of lost information or errors. The next thing is that forms are very easy to fill out for technicians and they don't require a long learning curve. Third thing is professionalism. So for customers, it's easier for them to see a completed report digitally with no messy handwriting or no incomplete data, and it's something that customers definitely prefer to see digitally rather than on paper. Next main point is that it's integrated with the ERP system. And then finally, as we learned today, it's very easy to set up. So you don't need to be a software developer in order to set up a form. So now just to wrap things up, what are the next steps that you want to go through? First thing is always you want to have a session consult with your customer. You want to identify all of their pain points, make sure those are recorded, and then once you see that there is a need, schedule a meeting with us and we can do discovery session and present the solution to you and your customer to make sure that it meets all of their specific needs. So now let's go into the Q&A session. I think we have a bit of time. So there's a few questions that have come in. Okay, the first question here is, so where can I find previous reports once they're complete?
So there's multiple areas where you can find previous reports. So if a customer calls you and say, hey, can you send that work summary form or that inspection form from 6 months ago? One way to find that is in the approval module. Okay, so just like I showed you, if you would look up that customer, or you could filter by date, filter by the service order number or job number, and you would look up under reports, you would see all that reports that were linked to that visit. So that's one way of finding it. Also, if you're utilizing our service portal, the actual end customer, okay, can search for those reports and have access to the historical forms and reports themselves. So they would log into the service portal, search or filter by date or the service order number or job number, and then view the reports that were linked to that job or service order number.
Great. Okay, so we have a couple other questions. I think we'll just take two more of them. So the next one is, how does it link to the ERP?
So the way it's linked to an ERP is, we would host these reports on, let's say, a file server, such as SharePoint. And then we would link it to the service order or job inside of the ERP. And it's essentially just a hyperlink. So you select the hyperlink and the report would open up in, let's say, SharePoint, a PDF in SharePoint. So that's how it's linked to an ERP.
Okay, and we'll take one final question here. So the final one is, I have government mandated forms that need to look a specific way. How can I change the design of the form so it matches those requirements?
Yes, so we have customers that do have those government mandated forms, right? Where you can't change how they look like. They need to look a certain way. But essentially what you need to do on the field is you just need to capture that data, and you don't, on the mobile client, doesn't matter how it looks. So the questions are going to be, or the data that you're capturing is going to be identical to that government mandated form, but it won't look the same. But when that data is then captured, we will automatically populate those data points into that government mandated form. So essentially all that you're doing is replicating all the questions or all the data that needs to be captured on the mobile client. You would capture that data, and then we would feed that data back into that government mandated form. And it's going to look exactly the same.
Perfect. All right. Okay, so everyone, if you have any further questions, you can feel free to reach out to us directly. My contact information is here, and Luke's information is there as well. In case you have any existing or new sales opportunities that you've got, you can speak with Luke about those. So thank you everyone for attending today. We have another webinar coming up in 2 weeks for part 2. The invites as well as all of the details for that will go out to you by email soon. So we hope you register and attend that. And the recordings from today will be emailed to you, so you can share them or rewatch them at your own convenience. So thank you again, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.